Parshas Vayeishev. I want to finish up. So somebody sent me an email. It's on, Mayor? It's on? It's on? Okay. So somebody sent me an email and asked me why we do why in the beginning of the week we're still doing the last week's Parsha. So I just want, so I always feel that the first day or two, we've still got the previous week's Parsha ringing around in our head a little bit because we just did Kriyas Torah, so we always end up with 4 shiurim on each Parsha anyway. So maybe we'll change the balance a little bit. Maybe we'll do it only on Sunday. But at the end of the day, it's still all the same Torah. Okay. So there's a fascinating idea, a really very nice shot here, a wonderful shot. On page 204, and a few points I want to get through today. On page 204, where the brothers say, last time we spoke about the smell, right? We spoke about the lotus.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So then right after that, it says, on page 204, Pasuk 27, it's 6 lines from the bottom. L'chuvenim kerenu la yishmaelim. Let's sell him to the Yishmaelim. V'yadenu al te'ibok yachinu b'sreinu vayishvu echav. His brothers obey. The Yishmaelim had already entered the scene in verse 25. So the brothers say, let's send him to the Yishmaelim. Now, what is unique about selling Yosef to the Yishmaelim? So I'll tell you something fascinating here. There's a statement in the Gemara in Erchin. The Gemara says that somebody who speaks Lashon Hara, magdil avonos. Now the word magdil avonos is a hard word to translate. He energizes his averas, he magnifies the averas. It's a very hard word to translate. But the Gemara says he energizes his averas like idol worship, immorality, and murder. That means at some level, at some factor in speaking Lashon Hara that generates some sort of energy which becomes parallel to idol worship, immorality, or murder. So the Gemara says, it's a very strange thing. If a guy picked up a gun, if an anti-Semite held a gun to a Jew's head, and he said, worship idols or I'm going to kill you. So you got to die. If he says, murder him or I'm going to kill you, you got to give up your life. If he says, commit immorality or I'm going to kill you, you got to die. If a guy says, tell me something bad about Steve, right? You don't have to give up your life for Lashon Hara. Tell me something negative about Steve. What would you like to know? Personal life, business behavior, anything you want. Give me I'll tell you whatever you want. His betting record in the World Cup, anything you want. So, it could be that's not Lashon Hara, Steve, because that's so well known already. So that doesn't count. That's already a dumber you do it. There's no Lashon Hara on something that's worldwide, world renowned. So so you don't have to give up your life. What does the Gemara mean? What does the Gemara mean when the Gemara says that if you speak Lashon Hara, it's parallel to the 3 big averas, okay? So before anything, it's interesting that this is connected to the Yishmaelim. What did Sarah Imenu, if you remember when it says that Sarah Imenu, she sees Yishmael misbehaving, and she says to Avraham Avinu, get the bum out of the house. What did she say? Remember what Rashi says? She saw tendencies towards idol worship, immorality, and murder. That's what Rashi says back in Parshas Vayera. Right? You don't believe me? Take a look back. Take a look back at Parshas Vayera. We're page 96. Okay. So, top of page 96. It says, Vatera Sarah. Everybody see that top of the first pasuk on page 96. Vatera Sarah es ben Hagar hamitzris asher yolda laAvram mitzachek. Sarah saw that the son of Hagar, the Egyptian woman, was mitzachek. The article translates it as mocking. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says mitzachek. First Rashi on the page, right column. Lashon avodas kochavim. That's an expression used by idol worship, and he quotes a pasuk. Next line, Dalet Aleph, Davar Acher, Lashon Gilui Arayos. It's a Lashon of immorality. Towards the end of that line, again, Dalet Aleph, Davar Acher, Lashon Ritzicha, murder. So Yishmael, Sarah sees in Yishmael, there are different opinions whether she saw potential for this or she saw a tendency in these areas. She sees the 3 cardinal sins in Yishmael to get him out of the house. Who is it that the brothers are about to sell Yosef to? The first ones? The Ishmaelim. What's the connection? Because they've accused Yosef of speaking Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara is connected to 3 Averas. So you go, you Lashon Hara, so you sell to the Ishmaelim. We're on page 204, gentlemen. It's you sell to the Ishmaelim because the Ishmaelim represent those 3 Averas. By the way, you know who makes that statement in the Gemara? The Gemara in the Erechin that says that Lashon Hara is somehow parallel to the 3 sins. Tana debei Rabbi Yishmael. It's the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael. The yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael is the one that says that Lashon Hara is compared to the 3 big Averas. Okay, now why is that? Why is Rosh Hashanah compared to the big Averas? So the explanation, I think the Chafetz Chaim says, if I'm not mistaken. You see, when a person does an Avera, he creates a prosecutor, a spiritual prosecutor. Theoretically, imagine a person who speaks, who murders, commits adultery, idol worship, but he doesn't speak Lashon Hara. He learns his 2 halachas a day, right? Before he goes out and kills people, he learns his 2 halachas a day. Why did you kill him? I don't want to say. It's Lashon Hara. He's meticulously careful. He worships idols. He said, "Was anyone else there with you?" I don't want to say. It's Lashon Hara. Who was the lady you committed adultery with? Chalila chas v'shalom. I can't say. It's Lashon Hara. The Chafetz Chaim says, okay. It's a somewhat almost a ridiculous scenario. However, what happens is when let's say a guy murders, you create a prosecutor, a prosecuting angel. But if you're, let's reduce it for a second. Let's downgrade. Let's say a person has a weakness for pork. He eats pork. He's a good Jew in general, but he's got a weakness for shellfish. He eats shellfish, but he never speaks Lashon Hara. Such a thing's possible. Every time he eats shellfish, he creates a spiritual prosecutor. But there's a piece of tape across the prosecutor's mouth because he doesn't speak Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara works mida keneged mida. You don't speak Lashon Hara, so there's no prosecution against us. A person who commits idol worship, immorality, and murder, theoretically, if he doesn't speak Lashon Hara. So there's massive, mean prosecutors are waiting, but they've got tape over their mouth. The instant you speak Lashon Hara, what happens? They just rip the tape off their mouth. You've just activated and energized those prosecutors. So that's why Lashon Hara is parallel to those 3. It's not that the Avera itself is as bad as the 3. You wouldn't have to give up your life to speak Lashon Hara. You can speak Lashon Hara, sing like a canary. But what you do when you speak Lashon Hara, that's why the Chafetz Chaim compares it. When you hear somebody speaking Lashon Hara, somebody says, these guys. Jose says, "Come here, I want to take you come here for a second with me. You're speaking Lashon Hara, come here, I want to go with me for a second." And I take you into the base medrash, and I open up the Aron Kodesh, and in front of the Aron Kodesh, I say, "Okay, I want you to say bad things about the Jewish people. I'll tell God how bad the Jewish people are." When anybody stand in front of him and say, "Boy, the Jewish people, they are so, this, that." When anybody cuts a person in front of an open Aron Kodesh, that's what you're doing when you speak Lashon Hara. When we speak Lashon Hara, we're prosecuting the Jews. We're creating prosecutors for ourselves and for the Jewish people. So Yosef's brothers, at some level, they're selling him to the Ishmaelim. That alludes to his Avera of Rosh Hara, which activates the 3 cardinal sins. That's what the unfortunate say. Okay. Now, if you take a look, I heard a shot from the Rosh Yeshiva. Yeah, go ahead, Mayor.
But let's say a person hears Lashon Hara and doesn't know how to tell the person stop with.
So I'll tell you how to do that. First of all, the Gemara in Ksubas says, why our fingers are shaped like pegs? They're thick at the bottom and narrow at the top. And the truth of the matter is I never really understood that because my fingers, they're pretty straight. Look at a baby's fingers. Look at a baby's finger. A baby is born, the baby's fingers are basically almost look like a triangle. They're fat at the bottom and they narrow down. So Gemara says, you know why your fingers are shaped like pegs? So if you hear Lashon Hara, you put your fingers in your ears. And the Gemara says, why do we have earlobes? If you hear Lashon Hara, you double them up on your ears like this. Wow. So if you're ever sitting at a table and anybody speaking like if you do like this, people will generally get the hint. If you're standing like this, people will generally get the hint. Okay, that's sometimes you got to get up and walk away. What if you're due to cover? I'll tell you what I found is the most effective way to avoid Lashon Hara or hearing Lashon Hara. Blame yourself. See, if somebody starts talking, you say, well, by the way, it's Lashon Hara. No, it's not. It's true. Or all the excuses which don't work. If you say to the guy, listen, I've been a little loose with my time. I've been talking about people too much. Maybe we could talk about something else. I'm blowing myself. People are more than happy to let you be the Russia. right? As long as you don't say it about me, chas v'shalom, I'm a tzaddik. And if I'm saying it, it's for a beneficial purpose. And I have to say it, all the excuses people come up with. Any time in life that you blame yourself, people are more than happy to let you blame yourself. Right? If a guy like sideswipes you, and the guy there's an almost accident because the guy, there's some lady, pulls into your lane or something. You say to her, well, please forgive me. I'm sorry that I took up so much of my lane. Something like that. Try to say something tactful. Something like that. Boy, I'm sorry that I didn't eat the soup. My taste buds aren't working tonight. Something like that. But blame yourself and everybody's happy. Blame yourself, everybody. That's the tactful way to get out of hearing Lashon Hara. If you get aggressive, people get aggressive back. That's a rule in life. That's a rule in life. Okay, let's go on. I want to show you this is a very powerful idea. I heard this from the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshiva's Beis Yisrael, Daniel Lehrfield Shlita. Said like this. If you take a look at the bottom of the page, it says, Vayeishev Reuven el habor. Reuven goes back to the pit. Now, it was his idea to throw Yosef into the pit because Reuven had a plan to go back and bring Yosef to Yaakov. He was going to rescue him. So it says, Vayeishev Reuven el habor. He goes back to the pit. V'hinei ein Yosef babor. He's not there. Vayikras begodov. He rends his garments. Why does Reuven rend his garments? Because Reuven, we said, he understands that he's going to be blamed over here. He's the firstborn. He's the oldest one. And even more than that, he's got the most to lose. If the entire theme of Yosef, with giving him the cloak, the what do you call it? The ksones pasa, what did we call it? The multicolored cloak. And Yosef's dreams of becoming a leader. So who stands to lose the most? Reuven, who's the firstborn, who should really be getting these positions. So Reuven is, number one, he's despondent because his plan was to bring Yosef back to his father, number one. And number two, he knows that if there's a problem with Yosef, he's going to be blamed more than anybody else. So Reuven rends his garments. What does Rashi say over here? Says Rashi, bottom Rashi on the left column, it's the last Rashi on the page, on page 204. Vayeishev Reuven, why was he taken by surprise? Where was he when they sold him? He had been with them all along, so why wasn't he there? Says Rashi, Uvemichirasa lo hayasham. He wasn't there at the time of the sale. Why? Shehigia yomo lelech l'shamesh esaviv. It was his day to go and serve his father. Reuven had to serve his father. By the way, you know where lishamesh is to serve. The son is called Shemesh, because the son, and the guy in shul who runs the shul, what's he called? Well, he's called all sorts of names by people who don't like him in shul. But what's he called? He's called the Shamish, right? He's called the Shamish. The guy, I'm not talking about the Gabbai. The Gabbai is the guy called up for Elias. The Shamish, the guy who straightens out the shul, tells the kids to stay away from the table at the Kiddush so the adults can get to the table first. Away from the tables. Away, wait for the adults to come. So he's called the Shamish, right? You know that guy, right? You had one in your shul, right? Yeah, his name. And he always speaks with an accent. Right? Even if he's from Phoenix, he speaks with a European accent. Away from the table. So there's always a guy, and his name is Herman. Right? There's always same guy. They're the union, the Shamish union. And of course, as kids, all that did was it gets us to see. As kids, we always had contests. Who could get the most pieces of cake. Because while he's saying away from the tables, wait for the adults to come in. Okay. So the son is called the Shemesh because the son is the loyal. What does Shemesh? Shemesh means to work, to do, to serve. The son is the most loyal servant. The son comes up every day, never misses a day. He's never late. He gets up at Nate's, Yonah. The son gets up at Nate's every morning. How do you like that? Wow. Never misses a day. How do you like that? Son's always up at Nate's. Sees the Ohr Somayach guys at Nate's. How do you like that? So that's why he says, L'shamish, it was his day to serve his father, number one. But look what the Rashi says. Davar acher, says Rashi. Now pay attention very carefully. This is just absolutely remarkable. Asuk haya besako uvitaniso. Reuven left the brothers to go put on sackcloth and fast. Al shebilbel yitzue aviv. Because of that incident when Yaakov and Rachel had died, and Yaakov moved his bed into Bilhah's tent. So then Reuven got involved and he stood up for his mother's honor and he moved the bed into Leah's tent. Remember the incident with Reuven? So now he was doing tshuva for that incident. Oh, how providential. Right, just when the brothers, he puts them in the pit and then he goes off and starts doing tshuva. There's only one problem. You know how long ago that incident took place? When did that incident take place? Yosef was 7 years old when Rachel died. That Yitzchak was 10 years old. And all of a sudden, Reuven's doing tshuva. Now you woke up, what was that, 10 years later, now it's time to do tshuva? What, just when we're about to sell Yosef? Oh, sorry, fellas, I got to take a break. I got to go get an energy drink and go do tshuva, right? And he excuses himself, right? Reuven goes, why is he doing tshuva now? I'll tell you, unbelievable. You see, this begs a bigger question. The brothers, Chazal say, they made a beis din. You can't go just selling people and sentencing people to death. They made a beis din. They paskin the halach. The guy's a rodef. He's a pursuer. He's telling on us, and by Noachide laws, we deserve the death penalty. If he's right, he's a pursuer. Guy deserves the death penalty. You got a whole lumdish over here. Only one question. Who's the Gadol Hador? Yaakov Avinu. So why are you doing this on your own? Why don't you go to the Gadol? Why are you making these decisions on your own? Why don't you include Yaakov on the beis din? Why are you doing this? Yitzchak is still alive. Why are you doing this on your own? You know why? You know what? Reuven makes a calculation. Under normal circumstances, they probably would have. But what happened was somebody set a precedent that Yaakov's got an opinion and I got an opinion too. Who set that precedent? Reuven himself. Yaakov moved the bed into Bilhah's tent. Reuven says, well, I disagree. It's a machlokes. I hold he should go in Leah's tent. Right? Oh, you set the precedent, Reuven. So he's not doing tshuva only for that action. You know what he's doing tshuva for? If brothers could get to the point where they're ready to kidnap and sell and kill another brother, whose fault is that? Reuven says, it's my fault. I set the precedent over here. It's my fault. I'm the one who set a precedent. That I got to do tshuva for. Remember I told you the Gemara says in Psachim, they had a person in one of the 7 things, nobody knows what, there's 7 things the Gemara says nobody knows. Nobody knows how they're going to make parnasa. Nobody knows what his friend is thinking. Obviously, because if you did know, he wouldn't be your friend, right? Nobody knows what do you call it? Nobody knows when the ultimate redemption is going to come. There's 7 lists. Nobody knows the unborn gender, the unborn child. Nobody knows what the gender is going to be, independent of besides what do you call it? What's it called? Ultrasounds, right? Nobody knows. 7 things. One of the 7 things it says that nobody knows is called omek hadin. The depth of judgment. And Rashi brings down 2 perushim. Rashi says, nobody knows the depth of judgment based in monetary law. You see how complex monetary law could be. And Rashi says, nobody knows the depth of judgment. The second prayer says, in the future. God's judgment. Because God's judgment isn't just for what we've spoken about this many times. God's judgment isn't just for what you do. It's for the ripple effects of what happens. Remember, you get reward also for the ripple effects. If you do something good and somebody learns from you, so then their ripple you get for that. Reuven understands at this point what's happening is because of him. It's a fascinating idea. Because he realizes, if not for me, could be they wouldn't be doing this right now. They wouldn't have had the nerve to take on and go up against the Gadol Hador, Yaakov Avinu. I'm the one who set the precedent that, listen, everybody's entitled to their opinion. Everybody's got an opinion over here. I got an opinion too. Oh, you're not supposed to have an opinion. There's a Gadol around, so go to the Gadol. Why do you have your opinion? Reuven says, I set that precedent. There was a Rabbi Avram Alter from Chicago. He once told us a story here at Ohr Somayach. He said there was a guy who wanted to become a rabbi of a conservative shul. And he was going to have a plan to make this conservative shul orthodox. So he met with the board of directors of the shul, and they were absolutely enamored with the guy. He was a great speaker and a great with people, and he was a great fundraiser, great this. He had all the qualifications. And he meets with the board of directors of this conservative synagogue, and they're taken with this guy. They said, yes, we want this guy to be the rabbi. And then one of the guys says, yeah, but we have to clear it with the president of the shul. He makes all the decisions, meaning he's the richest guy in the shul. He makes all the decisions. So we gotta, it's usually how you become the president. So you gotta be I was once in a shul, by the way. I'll tell you the story first. So we gotta clear it with the president of the shul. So they go to the president, of the shul, and the president says, absolutely not. Well, I'm the president, the shul's not going to become Orthodox. No mechitza in the shul. So the guy says, so let me speak to the president, I'll win him over. He goes in and he says to the president, I'll be the, what do you call it? President says, as long as I'm the president, there will not be a mechitza, the shul is not going to become Orthodox. Does this guy ask you why? I mean, if I become the rabbi, it'll be able to, we'll increase membership, we'll increase everything, your shul will grow, there'll be growth. What's the problem? He says, I'll tell you what the problem is. My next door neighbor is an Orthodox Jew. I'm conservative, I don't keep the halachas. My next door neighbor is an Orthodox Jew. For 25 years, my next door neighbor has been building a sukkah. Every sukkah, he builds a sukkah. Not once in 25 years has he invited me into his sukkah. If that's what orthodoxy is, I'm not interested. The shul will never be orthodox. They did not get the rabbi. They did not get the benefits, everything else, because of one guy who didn't invite somebody else. Now, that was the story that he told us. I would like to just add my own twist on the story. Is if the guy would have invited him into the sukkah, he would have said, don't be so pushy with your religion. That's probably what would happen. What do you put? Don't be so pushy. So the guy's looking for an excuse. That's what I think. The Orthodox Jew probably felt that he probably had some history with this guy anyway. So I don't blame the Orthodox Jew so bad. But in case the Orthodox Jew was at fault, then he carries the responsibility for what that shul never became. In case the guy would have come in, and in case he misread the I'm not so quick to condemn him. Because other people, you know how this works. He never offered me his tefillin. Yeah, and on the day that he would have offered you the tefillin, he would have called the police for religious coercion. Yeah, so sometimes people are just looking for excuses, but we don't want to be the ones to give them the excuses. We don't want to be the ones to give them the excuses. I tell you, what's your name?
Mordechai.
Mordechai, yeah, go ahead.
A quick question, but it doesn't seem fair that because how could he actually know that and he carried the responsibility for that?
You're right, to the degree that a person should know and could know and possibly will know. You're right, God works to the degree that we do have the, what do you call it? It could be that he invited the guy in to play cards with him, and it could could be invited the guy in for something else, whenever only God makes that calculation to what's the level. I'll tell you the positive side of the story was a guy in the Lakewood Kollel in Chicago. They brought in a community called Lakewood Kollel. One day a secular guy walks into the Lakewood Kollel. It's a kollel for serious Talmidei Chachamim from Lakewood. And a guy walks into the Lakewood Kollel. He says, hi, I know this is a Jewish religious place. I'd like to learn more about Judaism, Jewish religion, about Judaism. So the head of the kollel, it's not a kiruv place, but he understood that if there's a guy comes to you, he says, okay, come on. And he says, I'm curious, what brings you here? He says, I'm a vendor at Wrigley Field in Chicago. The vendor. You know what a vendor is? The vendor guy sells Cokes, peanut. He says, I'm a vendor at Wrigley Field in Chicago. There are these religious guys who are vending. Vending is a hustle job. I vended a couple of times. I once substituted for somebody vending. I vended once at Wrigley Field at a Cubs game, once vended at a Bears game. And I remember when the guy asked me to vend for him, I was really excited. Wow, I'm going to watch a baseball game and make money too. I'm going to tell you guys something. I barely watched the game. When you're vending and dollars are coming in, all of a sudden everything else paled. Once in a while I stopped. There's bases loaded. Big hitters up, so you stop to watch for a second. The rest of the time you're hustling bucks over there. There's nothing. I don't care about all of a sudden the game is very trivial. It's a hustle job and you're making money. All of a sudden that game is just very trivial. So what I did, I was selling Cokes. I followed the peanut guy around. Because I figure anybody buying peanuts gets thirsty, so they'll probably want a Coke. So I followed the peanuts guy around. That was my first. What do you call it? But I saw, all of a sudden sports. All of a sudden money. Sports nothing. These guys are earning the money. I want to earn money too. So the guy says, I was a vendor at Wrigley Field. There were these religious guys. It's a hustle job. But every day I noticed that these religious guys would get together, and for about 10 minutes they would daven. They would pray. He said, if guys could stop in the middle of vending when you're giving up money in order to daven and make a minyan, I want to find out more about this religion. He says, and one of the guys, I watched him, he got change from somebody, and the guy, instead of giving him a $5 bill, gave him a $100 bill. And he didn't know about it. And this religious guy turned around and said to the guy, here, you gave me 100. It's supposed to be a 5. You gave me 2. He gave back the $100 bill. He says, if that's what a religious guy does, I want to learn more about this. And by the way, I saw the guys vending. These were not the cream of society when I was there. These were not people who would have given back $100 bills. They were more likely to pull out a gun and take another $100 bill for you. So it wasn't like this is something that, hi, sir, here you go. It wasn't. These are not. You know what I'm talking. So at the end of the day, that's the two sides of the coin for the responsibility level. And that's what we learned from Reuven over here. It's a very, very powerful idea. Okay, Yosef goes down to Egypt, and then you've got this whole story with Yehuda and Tamar. Now, you want to see something really enchanting? I've noticed this. I'm not making any claims. I just want to show you something that I noticed. I was bothered by something. On page 208, it says, Vayiba Esahi Vayered Yehuda me'esachav. Yehuda leaves his brothers. Vayet ad ish adulami ushmo chira. he joins up with a man of Adulam, and his name is Chira, Ish Adulami. Now, this entire story unfolds, if you follow the story, where Yehuda has two sons, and they die, and he's got a daughter-in-law named Tamar, and then Tamar stands and entices Yehuda, and he joins up with Tamar, and then they have Peretz and Zerach, and this leads to the Davidic line. Right? This is Malchus based Dovid. The whole story over here is about, and the commentary says, I think the Medrash says, everything's going wrong at this point. Everything's going wrong. Yaakov Avinu is mourning because he thinks Yosef died. Yosef is being sold to Egypt, and so he's not in a great mood. Yehuda has been deposed by the brothers. The brothers deposed Yehuda. Thank you. The brothers deposed Yehuda from being the king. So he's not in a great mood. Everything is going wrong. And why? And then his wife dies, his two sons die. And while all this is happening, what's HaKadosh Baruch Hu doing? He's bringing about the Messianic line. That means while everywhere you look, nothing is going right. And while nothing's going right, it's the most right thing could possibly be, because this is going to lead to Mashiach. Right? He's creating the Messianic line here. Now, I was a little troubled, because the first thing that caught my attention here is it says that he joins up ad ish adulami ushmo chira, a man from Adulam, as if I'm supposed to know something about that. Very curious, who is this guy? Not even Jewish. I don't know who this guy is. And he's got a partner. So the word vayet in the top line, how do you say to plant? If you had an ayin at the end, it would be vayita. Vayet is the same root as to plant. This whole section is planting the seeds of Mashiach, who comes from who? Dovid HaMelech, from Yehuda. So I looked up, there's something called a concordancia. You know what a concordancia is? Or concordance. It's a book, a very thick book, that has every word in the Torah, everywhere in Torah, where every word that you could think of, where does it appear a pasuk in the Torah? And it's a very thick book, and it writes out the pasuk in Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, where is it? So I picked up a concordancia. I was curious, where does Adulam, this word Adulam, does it ever appear anywhere else in Nach? And guess what I found, gentlemen? When Dovid HaMelech was on the run from Shaul, he hid in a cave called Me'oras Adulam, the cave of Adulam. Isn't that interesting? Vayet ad ish Adulami. He's planting the seeds that are going to reach the man of Adulam. Right? With any imagination, could that be alluding to Dovid HaMelech maybe? Right? But look even more. Look at that word Adulami. Ayin is 70. Anything significant about number 70? That's how many years Dovid HaMelech lived. He lived 70 years. Dalid obviously stands for David. Lamed, he was 30 years old when he became king. He was 30 years old. Mem Yud stands for Melech Yisrael, when he became the king of the Jewish people. So Adulami itself, the word Adulami itself, is a straight out allusion to Dovid HaMelech. Right? So Vayet Adish Adulami, Yehuda is planting the seeds that are going to reach this man of Adulam. Right? Remarkable. Now, he has two sons, and they commit Averas, and then he's got this daughter-in-law who he's kind of draying her off. He says, well, you wait for the third son to grow up. But he's not going to let her marry the third son. She's already killed two husbands. She's a killer. Right? There's a concept in Halacha called a woman who's a katlodi. So a woman who's a katlodi, she's a woman who's had three husbands who have died. And she's got a track record. Her husbands die. Right? Could be the cyanide she puts in the food. We don't know. But whatever it is, she got a track record. So what do you call it? What was the story? I was going to tell you a story before. What did I start mentioning about? What were we talking about? The shul. What were we talking about? I forgot to tell you. There was something I want to tell you. No, that was the vending. I told you there's something else I started telling you.
The president of the shul.
Oh yeah, the president of the shul. Thanks. I was once in a shul. So in some of these synagogues, there are more people sitting up front than there are sitting in the shul. So you got the president, the vice president, and the head of the sisterhood, and the head of the brotherhood. They're all sitting there up there with the rabbi. So I'm walking home with somebody. I said to this guy, I was kind of in a cynical mood. I said, "What does the president do?" So the guy looked at me and goes, "Well, he helps the rabbi." I said, uh-huh. And what does the vice president do? He goes, well, he helps the president. He didn't pick up my drift. He thought I don't know what. He apparently thought I didn't know what presidents and vice presidents. You know, I was going somewhere else with this completely. He just kind of. So what do you call it? Now, so what happens over here? So this woman Tamar, his daughter-in-law Tamar says, "Listen, you know, it's time to listen. I can't wait forever over here. Something's got to happen." So Tamar goes off. And she stands at a crossroad. Now you take a look on page 210, 4 lines from the top. Thank you. She stands at a crossroad, and it says, Vayireha Yehuda vayechshaveh lezona. Yehuda sees her and thinks she's a harlot. Ki kisas apaneh, because she covered her face. Now most harlots don't cover their face. So Rashi points out, of course she didn't cover her face. But when she was his daughter-in-law, she was so tznius that he never saw her face while she was his daughter-in-law. And that's why now when her face was uncovered, he didn't know that that's his daughter-in-law. She was so tznius. Do you see what this is, gentlemen? This is another one in that pattern we've always spoken about. That means her inherent nature is what? Modesty. Extremely modest. And what is she doing now? But behaving in the most immodest way possible? A girl standing at a crossroads like a zona? And she's the most immodest way possible. Why is she doing it? L'shem Shamayim. That means she's going against her nature. That's what we've spoken about all the time. The way you serve is God. We spoke about Avraham Avinu's chesed, remember? Goes against his nature. Yitzchak is strict justice, goes against his nature. Yaakov is truth, he goes against his nature. And here you have Tamar, whose obviously her nature was what? Incredibly tzanua. Her own father-in-law never saw her. But this has to be done, therefore I got to do it. It has to be done. This is what's got to be done. This is the only way it's going to work. And the Medrash says that Yehuda goes and Yehuda solicits her. The Medrash says, Yehuda? Yehuda's one of the shvatim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he gets involved in this sort of behavior. The Medrash says, Yehuda in and of himself would never have done something like this. The Malach pushed him in this direction. Be careful. You can never use that as an excuse. Yeah. Nobody can ever come back and say, well, it was a malach, the malach, right? The devil made me do it as something else, That, yes, but not that the malach. That happened. This is a one-off in history, right? It only happened to Yehuda. You cannot use this. This you could never use as an excuse. This isn't going to happen. There's a story with Shlomo HaMelech. There's a medrash that Shlomo HaMelech had a very beautiful daughter. And Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, he looked into the stars and he saw that the guy who's going to marry his daughter is going to be the poorest pauper in Klal Yisrael, the most bedraggled pauper, is going to end up marrying this beautiful daughter. So the Medrash says, you're a wonderful guy, but poor as could possibly be. Shlomo HaMelech says, listen, I can't imagine this happening. I'd like to see how Hashem works in his world. So he builds a tower. Shlomo HaMelech builds a tower at sea. A tower. He puts this daughter in the tower, and he surrounds the tower with his loyal servants. It's absolutely and utterly inaccessible. In the meantime, this poor guy is walking along, and he absolutely has got a petty to his name, and he's freezing cold, and he needs to go to sleep. He's on some dirt road. He needs to go to sleep. And off the side of the road, there's a carcass of a cow, a dead cow. It's about all he's got, so he climbs into this carcass to stay warm. I guess it's warm in there, right? And he climbs into this dead carcass of an animal, and it's nice and warm and cozy. And in the meantime, some eagle swoops down, picks up this entire carcass, and flies over and drops it on the balcony of the tower where Shlomo HaMelech's daughter is. That's what the Medrash says. So, he wakes up in the morning and he's in a balcony in the world, and he's a very handsome guy. And all of a sudden she wakes up and, hey, there's a Bachur on my merpeset. There's a Bachur on the balcony. Hey, look at that, And she brings him in and she rinses him off, and he's very handsome and he's very charming and he's a Talmud Chacham. He's got all the qualities, and there he is. So he says to her, do you want to get married? She says, yeah. So he writes a ksuba in blood He writes. He cuts himself. He doesn't have any. He didn't have a pen, so he wrote a ksuva in blood. And I think he calls two angels to be witnesses on the ksuba, and the two of them get married. And a few months later, she's showing. She's expecting. So like some of the watchmen over, they go to Shlomo, say, we got some good news and some bad news. The good news is you're going to be a Zaidi soon. The bad news is that it's the wrong daughter. So Shlomo comes to the palace. He meets the guy. How did you get here and everything? And Shlomo Melech says it's he sees him. He's a wonderful boy. He sees how wondrous Hashem's ways are. But that's the Bachur on the balcony also doesn't work, gentlemen. Don't go climbing into any carcasses, right? I don't know of any shidduchim that were made that way. How'd you meet her? Well, it was a cow's carcass. Oh, really? Mine was a goat. No, don't do that. No. So over here, Yehuda gets involved over here, and it's what he calls. It's absolutely. So the Medrash says that there was the Malach came. The Malach came and created the desire in Yehuda, which was not natural. And Yehuda ends up marrying Tamar, and what do you call it? Then they have these two children, Peretz and Zerach. Okay, we're going to stop here, gentlemen. I want to stop early. And we'll continue tomorrow.